Child and Adolescent welcomes you to another great episode of our Health, Hope, and Happiness podcast brought to you by Stipple. On today's segment of Ask Dr. Steve, Dr. Steve Graef, owner of Mindurance, an organization that has one-on-one online mental health coaching to help coaches and athletes manage their stress and enhance their performance. Today, we're going to talk about sportsmanship, Steve, and this is going to be another very interesting topic, I think, as many of the behaviors we see from coaches, athletes, and even fans, may be modeled by what we're seeing or experiencing when we're watching a professional or collegiate game. Emotions, as you know, and we'll talk about it, are often stirred up, and in the heat of the moment, behaviors are exhibited that may not come out when calmer circumstances are there. And as usual, we'll take a look at the different perspectives from a coach, a parent, even the athlete's point of view. I often think back before these segments when I used to coach youth sports, particularly with this one, sportsmanship was top priority, I think, at that age. You're trying to teach the kids about fairness, respect for one's opponent, be gracious in winning or losing. But we all know as we move up the chain to high school and college, stakes are higher, emotions are more intense. So I'm going to ask you the leadoff question. Did you ever participate in a game where you felt maybe there was a lack of sportsmanship shown by a coach or a fellow teammate? Or even an opponent?
Nothing actually stands out in my main recollection. I mean, there was definitely rivals that we had where things would get a little bit chippy. But at the end of the day, a lot of those games ended up being just really hard-fought battles that I think both teams ended up having kind of a mutual respect for one another. There were some teams that we played that had some interesting strategy that some might consider a bit lowbrow. I remember playing Ravenna, and they had this incredible running back by the name of Marcus Sanders, and he was keen to do like cutbacks. He was so fast, and he would go one direction and then completely change course to the other direction of the field. And so when he would do that, all of his offensive linemen would just be waiting, ready for us to turn around and start chasing him again. And there was many times where I just got completely clocked because I'm trying to track Marcus Sanders, and then boom, the offensive lineman is right there waiting for me. So, I mean, I guess it's not even lowbrow. It's just kind of the way that their thing works. But it was by no means ever kind of in poor sportsmanship. Thinking to Ohio State and some of the games that I watched on the sidelines, those were never situations of poor sportsmanship. But since I had graduated, certainly there has been some times, I think I recall some players like giving the middle finger and, people meeting in the middle of the 50-yard line or planting flags and stuff. You've seen some of that maybe in more recent Ohio State history, but I don't really recall any of that when I was actually on the team.
Yeah, and you were just ahead of the social media thing as well. So I think some of this stuff may have always happened, but it just gets magnified and blown up with everybody having a phone in the stands as well.
I think there's a lot of truth to that because as we think about sportsmanship, and this might be something we go back to quite frequently, is almost a continuum or notches of kind of positive sportsmanship where, you're deliberately helping somebody up or really going out of your way to shake somebody's hands or sharing vocally just accolades about the other team. And then there's kind of neutral sportsmanship, I guess, where you're not really causing a ruckus, but you're not really going above and beyond to show your appreciation for your opponent. So I think a lot of people can operate there. And then there's the negative sportsmanship where you're complaining about the refs, complaining about the other team, or you're actually getting into an altercation, physical altercation, yelling matches with other athletes, coaches, or parents. And if you think about this kind of positive, neutral, negative continuum or notches, there is probably a bit of a upstream influence of stressors, demands, maybe physical fatigue, burnout, overwhelm, emotion, personality style, that all kind of flows into this black box of sportsmanship. And then if you put an individual in a particular situation with all of these effects coming downstream, that could pop somebody into, more negative sportsmanship, or if they have great emotional regulation abilities, they may stay more neutral. Or if they have very, very solid emotional regulation abilities, they may actually still be able to remain positive in that competitive environment. So I'm sure as we talk through this podcast, we'll be able to explore some of these more upstream effects and how they may affect the black box of sportsmanship.
So, Steve, we're going to move into the parent segment here. As always, this is sort of my area where I move into it. As we've mentioned, I have kids who have played sports from cheerleading to competitive cheerleading to football, basketball, soccer, cross country, you can name it. So as a parent, I know when I coached or even watched from the stands, sportsmanship was a priority. To set the tone for this segment, what advice would you give parents regarding sportsmanship?
Model it. You are the North Star, particularly with young athletes. If I'm at Ohio State on the field, I don't really know what my parents are doing, way up in Double A or whatever. But certainly at the younger level and even beyond, you set the tone. You set the tone of what your young athletes, sons or daughters, believe is good sportsmanship. How to interact with coaches, how to interact with other parents, how to interact with other teammates, athletes. And so if you're not doing that well, that's going to send the message that it's appropriate to not handle it well. And so keeping in mind what you do, not only is your child watching, but other people are watching as well, and they're noticing.
So in this segment, we're going to throw out a lot of statistics, so bear with me. So in the next question, in a recent study, 75% of parents and coaches agree that it is a parent's responsibility to teach their kids sportsmanship. Yet, many of these same parents teaching sportsmanship are not following their own advice. Again, what would be good advice for parents to follow through on this when they agree themselves that they're the role model?
Yeah, it's a classic do as I say, not as I do. Certainly I never fall prey to such things, but it's really an opportunity for those listening to this to wake up, okay, and deliberately think about, I'll bring this up again. We have the black box of sportsmanship. And within this black box of sportsmanship, there's positive sportsmanship, negative sportsmanship, and just more neutral sportsmanship. And what happens in that black box, how individuals ultimately respond in a situation, parents included, is largely a result of the upstream demands and influences. And so I think there's an opportunity for parents to take a step back and think, okay, what is my relationship with my child's sports? What is my relationship with my child as an athlete? How do I view modern sport in today's society? What are the potential outcomes of participation of my child within their sport that I would be proud of, that I would feel disappointed in, that would impact me in some type of way? And that is not an exhaustive list, by the way, but it's an opportunity for parents to just get a little bit more closer to the source of why their child's sport and how their child's sport impacts them. So then if they're more aware of it, they can start to put interventions, coping resources, ways of thinking in place to manage and mitigate how they're going to respond in the black box of sportsmanship when there is a challenging athletic situation that's in front of them. Opposing parent says something, the coach isn't starting their kid, the referee made a bad call, whatever it might be, to be able to face those situations with a little bit more calm, cool collectedness instead of spouting off and demonstrating some poor sportsmanship.
So in the same poll that we just referenced, 16% of parents said they have witnessed a physical confrontation between parents at an athletic contest, and 55% of coaches have experienced parents yelling negatively at an official or their own kids, and 2 in 5 parents have experienced yelling negatively at other kids, not their own child. How does that reflect on sportsmanship?
I mean,
And that's a lot to take in there.
Well, it's a lot, but it's not. I mean, like, what are we doing? And if you're a parent listening to, like, what are we doing? Like, I get it. Like, it's your kid, emotions are high, but think about what's really going on here. This is a game that your kid happens to be okay in, and they're doing it. But what instead gets wrapped up is ego, one's own feelings of success as a parent. If my kid's an elite athlete, that somehow makes me an elite parent, that I did a really good job parenting because my child's an elite athlete, gives me notoriety within the community. If my kid is getting letters for recruitment to a college. And that's not to say that those things aren't awesome and exciting, and well-deserving within the world of sport, but you gotta handle this with a little bit more objectivity and try to disconnect and view more pragmatically about what's really going on here. It's your young child or daughter that's participating in a game that's made up. They're trying to do well. They're hoping that it leads to maybe some college opportunities and stuff. And if it does, college might get paid for. And if it doesn't, we may have to take out student loans. But there's all sorts of different ways to become successful in our life. So as a result, now you envision this parent that's getting so worked up about the performance of their child or the way the game's turning out that they're yelling at other parents, they're yelling at the coaches, or they're yelling at other kids. Just get it together. Get it together and think about what is the relationship that you have with sport and why do you feel you're getting so worked up in this way? Unfortunately, a lot of parents won't. They'll continue the same behavior. Their kids will witness that. They'll start to view the parents as annoying instead of assets. It'll become disruptive and sport will no longer be fun. So if that's what you want to do, by all means, go about doing it. And that's some real talk coming through from Dr. Steve here, but I see it too often, not overly often. I mean, the majority of parents are well-meaning and the majority of sport is high sportsmanship, but the ones that I see that aren't operating in that, you really need to take a step back and let's chill out.
And my final statistic in this segment, in the same survey, 40% of parents insert themselves into the game by coaching their children from the sidelines. This underlies a coach's authority, also shows disrespect to the team and the coach, which in turn is, again, modeling poor sportsmanship. What advice, if any, would you provide here for parents?
Yeah, well, first off, if it's openly discussed as the season's getting started that the head coach of that team welcomes other parents to come down and help coach, then that's cool, right? That's part of the discussion. But if this is one of those things that permission was not granted and the parent has taken it upon themselves to insert themselves into a coaching role, despite that not being welcomed or agreed upon by the coach, again, I think there's really an opportunity to take a step back and consider, why am I doing this? What's the impact on this? And if you want to coach so bad, start your own team. And again, that may seem harsh, but think about if you were an employee in your work doing a job, and then all of a sudden somebody else gets hired in and starts telling you how to do your job. you probably wouldn't like it very much either. Not to mention the individual who's put in between in this situation, a developing 12, 13, 14-year-old, maybe younger, maybe older kid that's now trying to navigate the complexity of listening to a person that you were told to respect, aka coach, that has this special role that's been appointed to this person, and that we want to show coach respect by listening to them, while meanwhile parent is now on the sideline saying, no, listen to me, coach doesn't know what he's talking about. How is a 13-year-old supposed to navigate that? How is a 14-year-old supposed to navigate that? How is a 12-year-old supposed to navigate that? So if you had a little bit of empathy and you flipped the script and thought about what's the impact that this might be having on my child and not just my ego, then maybe there would be an opportunity to make some different choices in your behaviors.
In so many of our podcasts, we've discussed intentionality. After you've heard a lot of these statistics, what should be the intentionality of parents in sportsmanship? Sitting in the stands, just watching, being happy, your kid's out there playing and you're able to attend, or is there something else you would offer?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of motives and intentions here. I mean, one is supporting the kid, right? Your kid wanted to participate in this sport. So part of it's just supporting them. Even if you say nothing, physically being in the stands shows support. All right. Then if you want to get excited and you want to cheer and you want to yell and you want to, be excited about the great plays, that is totally appropriate. If you let off like, oh, come on, ref, that wasn't a great call, and it just kind of comes out and like under your breath, or, okay, that's not that terrible of a thing, but I think we know egregious behavior when we see it. But some other motives are just supporting community sport, just getting out there for the neighborhood, for the community, not only supporting your child, but also the entire team, because it's nice as an athlete to look up in the stands and see that there's actually people watching, so that's nice. That's another motive and a contribution. A recognition that, yeah, you're supporting your child playing sport, but what are you also supporting? You're supporting your child's independence about making a decision of how they want to spend their time. You're supporting your child's development and learning life skills and emotional regulation by participating in a activity that is safe and controlled, that teaches them cooperation, competition, stress management, emotional regulation, time management, organization. It's teaching all of these things to the child, and you're supporting your child's development and progress in that development in that type of way. So there's plenty of other positive results of participating in sport that is not just about whether your child gets playing time or whether they get a scholarship or whether the team wins. But instead, that's what a lot of parents get so hung up on. Is my child playing? Did the team win? And are they getting themselves in a position where they might be able to make a little bit of money in college? And that's short-sighted, because even if none of that goes well, even if the kid ended up never getting starting time, never winning a single game, and certainly not getting a college scholarship, they still got to participate in a sport that they enjoy with their friends. They learned emotional regulation. They learned decision making. They learned time management. They still likely ended up going to college or finding some type of job and career that didn't even need college. There's plenty of ways to be successful. There's so many pathways to how to enjoy life and have a successful life. And to think that the only pathway to a successful life is doing well in a sport and getting a college scholarship, you are so short-sighted.
So final question here. I'm gonna, as usual, I throw my young kids in this a lot. I remember once my son was playing a basketball game. He was younger. A kid was going up for a layup. He pushed him into the back. When he was in the air, the kid kind of, moved forward into the wall. Not a proud moment as a parent, but after the game, we had a little bit of conversation about that wasn't maybe the best way to foul, was pushing him. The kid really could have got hurt. And he himself did not display sportsmanship, again, at this young age, because he kind of just walked away and was upset. But are these the type of conversations parents should be having with their kids following an incident?
Yes, 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 yes. Whether with their own kid, if they did an incident, or if another kid did an incident, the opportunity to process, like, hey, what happened with that? How did you feel about it? Do you think you would have done the same thing? Do you think you would have done something differently? Because it just shows it shows a willingness to communicate and to make sense and kind of digest and assimilate. There's these unique situations that come up in sport where people lose their cool and they don't respond in the way that might be appropriate. And though we're talking about sport, it really becomes a metaphor of how do you handle tough, challenging things in life? How do you handle when things don't go your way? How do you handle when things don't go your way after a long streak of things not going your way? And that is that's life. Any adult that is listening to this podcast would agree that life is a whack-a-mole game that is a never-ending opportunity to adapt and adjust and overcome whatever the next demand and stressor is. That's the nature of life. That's what I've found as I've gotten older. It never completely clears the slate never completely clears. There's always something that is requiring our mental, physical, and emotional energy. And so by having a conversation with an athlete about how they respond to these challenging on tilt types of situations, you're also helping them think through and digest how might they respond to challenging situations that occur later on in life.
So we're going to wrap it up as usual. Anything else you would like to tell our parents on this topic of sportsmanship?
Yeah, I can get on my soapbox a little bit on this, because this is an area I'm particularly passionate about, because I see too many relationships in my field between parents and athletes that are strained because the parents are not managing themselves as appropriately as they could be. Having said that, there is the large majority of parents that are doing an awesome job. They're showing up to games. They're positively contributing. They're cheering. They're helping out with team meals. They're supporting coach. They're donating through fundraisers. They're selling candy bars. They're congratulating other teams' parents. All of that. And they're doing great work, and it's really lifting up the world of sport. And then, yes, there are a select few that are not doing that consistently or very well. And I just think it's an opportunity to take a step back and view objectively what is your relationship with sport, with your athlete in that sport, and is there opportunity for you to change and manage some of the behaviors and ways that you show up within it.
As always, Dr. Steve, we appreciate your insights, your advice on all these topics. And as to our listeners, we always appreciate you listening to the Health, Hope, and Happiness podcast brought to you by Stifel. Until the next time, we look forward to talking with Dr. Steve. Have a great day.
We'll see y'all.